Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is PJ, and today I'm back to shoot a video that to me is very significant because the video or the question that I seek to answer in this video is a question that I've been seeking to answer for quite some time now. I'm 27, and I've been seeking to figure out the answer to the question, what does it mean to be a man? And that has been a question that in the Western world especially has become harder and harder to find an answer to. And oftentimes it's through movies and through shows and through books that we encounter characters that to us represent what being a man looks like. And there are many other books, many nonfiction books that are written on masculinity and what it means to be a man. And some do a tremendous job, and I've learned a lot about what it means to be a man and what it takes to be a man. But I think that at the end of the day, the best teacher is our own experience. So I just wanted to, and I'm 27, so I'm definitely going to learn more and more about this as I grow older, and then as I become a father and move into the next chapters of my life. But I wanted to share my experience so far and what has worked well for me in my own journey of trying and wanting to be the best man I can possibly be for myself and then for those who are around me, and really fulfill my potential as a man. I seek to talk about and share what has helped me in hopes that it does the same for you, because it's my sincere hope that these videos help you through me sharing my experiences and what has helped me. So let's begin by talking about a book that really had a significant impact on me, but really more than the book itself, which I highly recommend the book, and I'm going to tag it below. It's called The Four Masculine Archetypes: The King, the Warrior, the Magician, and the Lover. These are the four masculine archetypes that I think Carl Gustav Jung, really popularized. But Robert Moore, who is the author of this book, really dives more deeply into what each of those represent in a man's psyche. And I think for us, the best representations of those right now that I have found are mostly found in TV shows, because our society has become kind of bland, and it's like you don't really have these distinct archetypes represented well. I'm not saying they're not out there. I'm just saying in shows they have the freedom and the liberty to get away with fully expressing these archetypes, whereas in the modern world, in the Western society right now, if you fully embody these archetypes, sometimes you might get criticized for being toxically masculine or whatever that means. So I wanted to start right off with that book because the main concept that I wanted to talk about, and that's something that I have learned to be the most useful way to go about being a man, starts with that book. That is the foundation. So let's talk about those four ideas that are represented in that book: the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover. What do they mean? So I'll start off with the lover because I feel like that probably was and is the one that I most naturally am. The lover is like the poetic side of us. It's the part of us that appreciates beauty and loves life, and loves the beauty and the pleasures and um, the sensational aspect of life. And obviously, love in terms of romantic love, but also in terms of love towards God, feeling God's love, all those things, love towards nature, all those things are parts of what makes up the lover archetype. And then the next archetype is the archetype of the warrior. The warrior is, like I said, is best represented right now, I think, in shows. Especially, I've been watching a show that has really helped me grasp that archetype more. The show that I'm referring to is called The Last Kingdom. It's on Netflix. And the character in that show, Uthred, I think really represents that archetype well. and many others actually in that show. But the warrior, as the name implies, obviously is the aspect of a man that is a warrior. And a warrior is not just a killer or it's not just a murderer, but the warrior has a cause and fights for a cause. And the warrior is not an aspect of us that we want to embody. At least I don't think it's an aspect of us that we want to embody 24/7. But we do need to have the ability to tap into that aspect of us and pull from it the wisdom that the warrior has and the strength and the grit and the perseverance that the warrior has. Because when a warrior sets out to accomplish a cause, for the warrior, it's life and death, right? When you're in a war, it's either defeat or victory, and defeat really means death. So the warrior has somewhat diminished the hold that death has on upon most of us. Um, and I think a good saying that really helps me understand the warrior is, "Today is a good day to die." Like that is and that's something Ido Portal says, uh, who is a movement instructor from Israel. He says that his mindset, or the warrior mindset, is waking up every day and saying, "Today is a good day to die," meaning that, like, if I fall in battle today, that's as good as any other day, and have completely diminished the hold that death has over oneself. Um, and so the warrior has to go into a battle with that mindset that today is a good day to die, and I may well die, but I'm going to give it everything I have. Athletes really embody the warrior archetype well in our current society, and I think if you watch the documentary about Michael Jordan called The Last Dance on Netflix, he really, I think, embodied the warrior archetype well in that show and in his life. So the warrior, for me, what it represents is waking up every day and saying, "Today I will do all I have to do, all my duties. I will fulfill my duties." Duty, and a sense of duty is a really big element and component of what makes up the warrior archetype. And saying, "Today I'm going to do whatever it takes and do what I have to do, what I need to do to accomplish my duties, to accomplish my goals, and whatever the day may bring, I will be willing and ready to face that with courage." That is a warrior aspect, or component of the man's psyche, that I think as men, and women as well, in a sense, because women also have to tap into that warrior at times. But as men, especially because historically men have been the ones that have been the warriors, um, it's crucial for us to be able to tap into that, because when you don't feel like finishing that last rep in your workout, when you don't feel like doing or sending that last email or making that last sales call or whatever it might be, when you don't feel like waking up in the morning and waking up when your alarm goes off, not hitting the snooze, when you feel all those things, you need that warrior aspect and that warrior archetype to say, "No, I'm going to do what I have to do." And that's it. It's do or die. That's what a warrior is like. It's do or die. So I'm going to do this. There's no excuses. There's no place to hide or run. I will, face my responsibilities and my duties head on, straight on, and not run away from them. And know that the burden I get to carry is a good thing, is cherished, and not something to despise or run away from. So the warrior, is the aspect of us that just does what it needs to do. No excuses, no victim mentality, no, poor me, none of that. It just does what it needs to do. And I think that's very attractive for women to see in a man, where he just doesn't complain, he just does what he needs to do, and he's courageous. I think that's very attractive. So let's go to the next archetype. The next archetype that I think is probably more difficult to understand for most people is the magician. The magician obviously doesn't really, is not really obviously represented in today's world, But I think the aspect of the magician that is represented is cultivation of a craft, or scientific discovery, or exploration, uh, and learning and research and things that like help us understand the world around us better. Those are all aspects of the magician. Magician is the one that discovers what the world is about. So in today's world, scientists, computer scientists, technology, uh, medicine, um, all those, probably you can even say maybe the religious teachers in a sense as well, because the magicians in their own time were somewhat the teachers for the people as well. And a lot of the magicians is the teacher aspect, actually. So teachers in a lot of ways, because the magician alchemizes in a lot of ways. So it gets raw material and it turns it into something else. So it's like what I'm doing right now in a sense is a magician's work, because I'm taking these ideas that I have learned and that I have exercised with and experimented with, and now I'm turning them into this video. So it's like I just alchemized something from the etheric realm, and now change the form of it and the substance of it, not the substance but the form of it, and I'm explaining it in a different way, and creating something new. So the magician is the teacher, is the explorer, is the discoverer, it's the scientist. And I think the school system is the magician aspect that we have in today's society, where we go learn. Even though I would say that the magician learns out of its own desire and seeks to understand the world around it out of its own volition and desire. Whereas in school we are kind of forced into learning, but more so even memorizing. But when we step out and try to learn, like if you're watching this video, you are exercising the magician, because you went out of your own way to watch this and learn, hopefully something from this, and gather new idea, new information. That is the magician at work. So the magician also makes up our workforce. A lot of the work now in society, especially we're in the midst of a pandemic, so a lot of people started working at home, and so a lot of works are virtual, are done online, are done via computers, and the manufacturing and working with your hands is becoming less and less, I would say. No, obviously it's never going to go away. At least I don't think it's going to go away, and we don't want that to go away. But working with computers, in the workforce, doing what we need to do in the workday, those are all elements of the magician. We have to use our analytical mind, and do our tasks of the day. Make a plan, do what we need to do. So that's the magician. I think I've explained that fairly well. Um, well, you're the judge if I explained that fairly well, but hopefully I did. Now let's move on to the next aspect of the man's psyche, or the archetype. The next archetype, which usually is the final archetype, where you don't just like jump out as a king. The king is the next archetype, but it's the archetype that usually men have to evolve into and grow into and reach. And it's usually, in most cases, I would say, it's only embodied in the later aspect of a man's life versus at a younger age. Because at a younger age, most often we need to be more of a magician, of a warrior. Whereas in the later parts of our life, we can tap more into that king archetype, and the king archetype really represents the aspect of the psyche. And this is actually how kind of Robert Moore in the book that I've tagged below, that's how he describes it. A good king is generative. He generates. Let's just say that. English is my second language, so sometimes I have a hard time pronouncing words. But he generates energy and wealth and prosperity and good, he just makes the society thrive, so to speak. And the society in it, could be his own family. A good king, or a king in general, a king is a man who, in most cases, has already, accomplished his financial goals in a lot of ways, has reached financial security and stability, and can nourish the people around him, not, financially and in other ways, like being able to impart wisdom and knowledge that he's gained and gathered into the lives of people around him. And when I was trying to say earlier, when I was saying the king is generative, I think that's how you say it, he generates a good environment and more life force in people around him. So, like, when a good king is ruling the nation, the whole nation prospers. Whereas the shadow archetype of the king is the tyrant, and when a tyrant is ruling, it's only the tyrant that is, uh, thriving. Everything else is falling apart. Everything else is burning down to the ground around them, and they're not generative. They're not generative. They're not generating any good things around them and in the society that they govern. So everything is falling apart. But when a good king is ruling, everything is thriving. And the thing about a king is that a king does not exist in isolation. It's about the fact, what makes them a king is that people around that person thrive. So a good king is not selfish. A good king is not all about itself. A good king is when, and another reason I said a man accomplishes or achieves or steps into the king stage later in his life is because most of us, during the earlier years of our lives, we have to be somewhat focused on ourselves. I don't want to say selfish because that has a negative connotation, but we are more focused on our own individual accomplishments. And then later, when we accomplish those things, when we make more money, when we, start a family, or, really help our children thrive, our woman in our life thrive, when we do all those things, that's when we're starting to step into that king um, archetype in our lives, because now we have expanded our focus from not only just on ourselves, but now our circle of influence has become bigger. So there are more people, our children, our family, and then later, our community, our country, our world. So a king's circle of influence is constantly expanding and expanding, and a good king is being generative for all those expanding circles of influence, not just itself. So let's go ahead about what I think is less spoken about and what I have found to be the most important element of growing into the best man that you can be. And to me, it all comes down to integration. You have to integrate these different aspects in yourself to be, in my opinion, to be the best man you can be. Because I do love to read and listen to audiobooks about masculinity and about manhood and about different people's perspective as to what that is. One book I was reading recently is called Strong Men. I think that's the title. Just it says Strong Men, but basically it's a larger saying. The subtitle, I think, is something like, strong men create good times create weak men create bad times create strong men. So it's like a cycle that continues. And he's talking about, that whole concept. But basically, he started a book by saying this is a dad in a box. He said this book is a dad in a box. And so I just thought that's pretty funny. But I wanted to say that I love reading these kind of books because, again, a lot of people, especially in the modern world, did lack a significant father figure in their life. Not that it might have not always been an absent father completely, but it might have been the case of an absent father mentally. So the dad would come home from work, he would be exhausted, and he would be absent from his family's life in a sense. He was there, but mentally maybe he was absent. So I think we not always got the masculinity that we needed to learn taught to us by our fathers. And then now add to that, I'm going on kind of a rant now, but then add to that society that kind of shames masculinity now and wants to rip it out of the fabric of society in a lot of ways. You add to that these components, and then it's like, where can we learn how to be a man? And I think that's where men and young boys, we start to turn to video games, and we turn to movies and TV shows. I think God of War, I remember like one of my friends was like, God of War was like the closest thing I've had to a dad. And, we started learning from video games, characters in video games. We started learning from people in TV shows. And the reason that I believe that is because those characters are not shackled by the bondage of political correctness. So they can be the man that they're meant to be and be free in that show, in that video game, and not constantly diminish their own manhood and masculinity because they're afraid of scaring other people around them because they're so much of a man. They exude that masculine energy. So I think that's why we turn to those things. But let me get back to what I was saying about I love consuming information about, this topic, because as much of a good role model as those characters might be in those shows, they're not trying to teach what a man is. They're just maybe embodying it. So we have to kind of learn those lessons on our own. But, what I've learned, and in most of the books I've read, I have found that the authors really focus on maybe like one archetype of the man, of the the masculine archetypes. And they don't focus, and this is not to not, I've learned a tremendous amount of good information from those books. So this is not to knock any book. A matter of fact, I'm going to link a bunch of books down here that have helped me in hopes that they will do the same for you. But I have noticed that they not often talk about the importance of integrating these different aspects. And I think we are so obsessed with some of these less embodied archetypes, like the warrior or the king, that, when somebody is writing a book or when somebody's teaching about it, they tend to focus more on those because they're more like intriguing and fascinating because they're more rare now. But I do believe that a warrior that has not integrated the lover, the magician, the king, and a magician that has not integrated his warrior and all the other archetypes, none of those archetypes on its own, to me personally, make a great man. Because when I personally look back, to great men in my life, um, I'm not going to say great men in history because history does, highlight the men who were really good at one archetype, like a really good warrior or a really good king or, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I believe in my own personal life, the best men that I have encountered embodied all those archetypes. And, I think that's what really makes a great man is, a great man is an integrated man, is a man who has access to all those archetypes at will, on command, and he exercises those archetypes in his life, because what gives us access and the ability to be able to access those archetypes on command is that we practice those regularly. So what I mean by that is each archetype has, to me, and what I've found, it's certain practices that help us cultivate that and exercise that more in every day. So, like when it comes to the lover, for example, some practices that help me get in touch with that aspect of myself are meditation, but I've decided to call meditation sitting in the presence of God or sitting in the presence of the Father, the Divine Father, and feeling His love. So for me, my meditation practice has turned more into not so much of like a magician kind of thing to do, but more of a lover thing to do, where I just sit in the presence of the loving Father and I feel that love, and I do that every day. So every day I'm practicing sitting in the presence of divine love, and all love is divine love in my perspective and in my opinion. all love stems from that divine love that we have received. So every day I practice receiving that and I practice giving that. And in that reciprocal fashion, that love strengthens and that lover archetype within me strengthens even more so every day. So another way is to, and I believe my girlfriend would say I'm bad at this, but I'm trying to get better at showing my love every day and speaking it into, saying it, not just saying, "Oh, well, I love you." No, like saying it to people around me who I love you, and I love this and this and this about you, even though I love their entirety. But I think people do love specifics when it comes to telling them what you love about them. So those are just like two main ways I personally practice. Uh, you know, Getting in touch with my lover inside myself. Um, and if you have found any other ways, please let me know. I love sharing and talking about these kind of things. So the next way and the next archetype that I try to exercise on a daily basis, so that I have access to it when I need it, is the warrior. How do I access the warrior? Well, a good way for most men right now in society is through working out and it's through exercise. And in particular, I would say lifting weights because it's like lifting a sword. Um, but there are phenomenal warriors, I would say, in every athlete. You look at a swimmer that swims like 8 hours a day or whatever, like when you read Michael Phelps' training log of a day, it's just like insane. That is a warrior. Um, or an athlete that's a runner, long distance runner. Like if you look at David Goggins, who to me like taught me a lot about just like what it looks like to be a warrior. And if you haven't checked out David Goggins on any social media platform, I highly recommend that you check it out, check his works out, and check out his book, Can't Hurt Me. That really just like more than any other book, that book helped me tap into my warrior. So when you look at those people, he runs like marathons like all the time. Um, those are all warriors. So it's not all about weightlifting per se, but I do believe weightlifting has that unique aspect of like getting us in touch with such a fundamental part of what it looked like to be a man in the back in the days, in the caveman days, where you had to like probably lift a rock and you had to lift up a log to make way for something, or build houses with your own hands. People had to lift all those heavy objects that go into building a house and shelter. And so all those elements, when we lift weights, I feel like they get us in touch with that aspect. And those are all aspects of the warrior from what I've personally experienced. When I do those things, when I work out, have a really good workout, when I get to those last sets and reps in my workout routine, that's when the warrior really starts coming out. Because you might get into the workout and you might do the first like one or two exercises and you're not really fully there. You're not really feel like you're in a battle or you're fighting. But when you get to those last reps, those last sets that you don't want to do, your legs are giving up, your arms are tired, that's when the warrior comes up and it says, "You got more in you." That's something that the warrior would say to you. You got more in you. You have more potential in you. You can do this. Believe in yourself. Those are all warrior things that I think a warrior would say. So those really come up. But another area that I have found the warrior really gets activated in me is through work. And usually closer to the end of a workday where I may be too like tired mentally to do my duties for the day. And so I see this tendency come up in me that says, whatever, like if you don't send that last email, it's fine. You can just do it tomorrow. But I have to step up and say, no, this is my duty for this day. So I have to do what my duty is. A warrior can't go to a battle and be like, well, I don't really feel like, shooting my gun today. So like, let me just go chill. I'll come back tomorrow. Like, no, he doesn't have that luxury. He has to fight or die. That's it. And when you tap into that, it's honestly a beautiful experience. It's almost like a spiritual experience. And the warrior, honestly, best warrior is the warrior that obeys, God, and is like he's a man of God, I feel like, because having integrity and honesty and a dedication to truth and valor, those are all very divine qualities that the warrior can learn from being subject to God. Um, and I'm sure some may argue that how can you be, subject to God and, be a warrior? But I do believe we need all of those roles in life. So I've mentioned two ways to tap into the warrior: working out at work when you don't want to do your duties for the day. It's a great way to exercise that warrior, bring that out and say, I'm going to do what I need to do, because it's like I either provide and put food on the table by doing my duties, or I don't. If you were a hunter and you had to get an animal that day, or your family doesn't eat, like, you didn't have the luxury of saying, well, I'll just deal with this tomorrow. No, like, your family's gonna be starving that night, so you have to put food on the table and you have to hunt. So those are all elements that make up the warrior, where the warrior doesn't give up until his duties are complete. um, a warrior gets the job done, no excuses. He doesn't want to go home and look at his wife and say, well, I kind of got tired, my hand got sore, so I just came home. Like, no, he finishes the job. So I think I'll just skip to the next one, because I love talking about the warrior, because it was really difficult for me to tap into my warrior for a majority of my life. So when I kind of cracked that code, I was like, oh my God, when I do these things, I feel like a warrior. I just got so like get excited about that when I share those learnings with you, that I can keep on and talk about the warrior aspect all day. But I'll digress, and I move on to the magician. The magician, I think, for me, was personally super easy to tap into, because I loved learning, and I loved gathering information, and I loved trying to figure out why things are the way they are, whether it was psychological, spiritual, physical, everything. I always try to, I try to constantly learn. And a really good way to tap into that magician archetype is to learn, is to read books, is to, watch YouTube videos, watch documentaries, try to constantly learn. But my martial arts teacher, my Qigong teacher, he always says, he who teaches learns. And it's so true. And if you really want to tap into that magician archetype, I think one of the best things you can do is to try to teach something that you have learned, whether it be to teach it to your younger nephew or cousin, or your little brother or sister, or it may be making a YouTube video about something you've learned, or at work, maybe a skill and you have to teach it to a new coworker of yours. Those are all good ways to tap into that magician, and you're turning knowledge into practical wisdom, because information becomes wisdom through practice and through application. And so when you apply the knowledge and the information that you have learned, that's when it becomes wisdom. And so the magician is very, very wise. And, like I said, wisdom is a byproduct. Information you can learn, you can gather, knowledge you can learn, you can gather, but wisdom is only gained when that knowledge is applied in a practical way. So those are good ways to tap into the magician, learn, teach. I would say, even in a way, I would say prayer, because personally, prayer can also be like a lover thing to do, but I think prayer for me is somewhat like a magician kind of experience, but I would say more of a miracle worker kind of experience, because you're asking something that you don't see to help you in your endeavors, to give you guidance, to give you wisdom, to give you a certain outcome or result, or give you the strength to do something. That's like you're tapping into something very magician-like. You're tapping into something unseen to give you wisdom and knowledge and power that you don't already possess, but maybe you do, you just don't know, and it helps you unlock that potential within you and bring it out into the world. So prayer, to me, I would say, is a very magician like thing to do, and it's a good way to tap into that. So I encourage you to include those practices into your life. And now let's move on to the king stage. I would say I in the spirit of full transparency, I don't say I have achieved the king stage, or am in that stage of my life. Um, Actually, let me segue into another book that just came to my mind, which really helped me tremendously. This is more of an audio program. I actually think it's not a book, but it's called The Amazing Development of Men by Alison Armstrong, and it talks about the four stages. I need a refresher to remember the four stages, but I remember these two really well. Well, actually, no, I do remember the first stage. The first stage is a page. Page is like, so let me say the stages real quick and now I'll explain what the page is. Page, I think it goes page, knight, king. I'm missing one. I don't remember exactly which one it is. But basically, it's like, actually, like, I think it's, yeah, okay, I remember. Page, knight, prince, king. I think that's how she puts it. Um, the page is like the wannabe knight. The knight, I would say is a warrior. And the page is like the follower, is like the young boy fighting with wooden sword, trying to be like the knight. So the page is like the young warrior in the making. The knight, according to Alison Armstrong, it's the aspect of the masculine who is trying to, the way she puts it is like he's trying to find the area or the domain in life that he can make his own or that he can dominate. So meaning that the knight is like exploring. He's exploring different options, careers. He's exploring different parts of the world or neighborhoods to live in. So he's like trying to figure himself out. So, her explanations are a little bit different than like the king, magician, warrior, and all that stuff. But it kind of helps you get the idea. When we're younger as men, especially me myself, really was, my night phase really looked like changing majors, trying to figure out, which one really fits me and suits me and my natural tendencies and abilities. Traveling, a lot of my friends who are in the night stage, they traveling is really important for them. And unfortunately, that has been hindered a little bit due to the pandemic, but hopefully that passes and they can continue to gather those experiences and those bits of knowledge through their travels and figure out, okay, like, what part of the world, where do I belong? Where's my tribe? All those questions are questions that the knight is trying to answer. And the knight, it's like it's traveling, it's going around, it's like a free agent. He's like moving from here to there, try to figure out, where he belongs and what is the thing that he wants to pursue. The next stage is the prince. So the prince is the knight that has just figured out, okay, I want to do this, I want to pursue this, and I want to build my kingdom in this way. And he is now in the process. He has now settled down, so to speak. The princes come into like two different ways, so to speak. One is they are wanting to find a woman and then build their empire, build their life with that woman. Another group wants to build, then find a woman. So they want to build, their kingdom, their empire in a solo way. And then when they have achieved their desired goals, then they want to invite a woman into that life. So, each has its benefits. It's a completely personal thing how, that path looks like. But the prince is now, maybe he has started a career. They started a job and they really want to improve at that job. Maybe they started their own business, so they're building that business. And as every person who has honestly tried to build something like that or get better at a job knows it takes time. And so the prince doesn't become a king overnight, but if he puts in that dedication, that effort, that consistency, show up every day, the prince has to be a warrior in a lot of ways because he has to show up. He has to also be a lover, especially if he has found his person and is wanting to build his empire with her in his life. Um, so he has to also be the lover. And also a magician. Let's say you're building your own business. You need to learn how to implement processes and systems and all of these things into your business. Learn new skills, maybe in some areas. All those things are also the magician. So the prince has to embody all those things. And then down, through the compound effect, that's another book I'll recommend down below. It's called The Compound Effect. Through the compound effect of these consistent actions that the prince commits and makes, eventually down the road, he becomes a king. He gets into a place where he's financially, satisfied in his life. All his needs are taken care of. The needs of people around him are taken care of. Maybe he started a business and the people in his business are thriving. His family's thriving. And so now he has stepped into that king stage. And a lot of times, when we step into that stage of being a king, then we look to, okay, how more can I be of service to the world? Not for selfish gain, because I already have everything I need, but how can I be just, of true service without any ego gratifications to get out of that service to the world. So those are some of the stages that she says we go through. And so let me segue back into how I was, talking about the 4 archetypes: the king, magician, warrior, and the lover. I was talking about the king, and I segued into that because that book and audio program really helped me a lot to understand the king stage. But the king stage is, like I said, is achieved when we have dedicated ourselves to a path and have consistently shown up day in and day out and put in the effort that it takes to build our life, build ourselves, take accountability, take responsibility, do the right things, be honest, be integrous, have accountability in our lives, have integrity in our doings. When we have done all those things with the compound effect, we achieve that king stage, and we are now in a situation in our life where we can put everybody around us in a place to succeed and thrive in their lives. Whether that be our family, our children, our siblings, our employees, whatever that may look like, people in our men's group, our friends. Those are all qualities of the king. I would say I am on the way, and when I get there, I'll tell you more about what it looks like to be a king. But for now, the same way I have learned about it, I would recommend those 2 sources: The Amazing Development of Men and the Robert Moore book, The 4 Archetypes of the Masculine Psyche. So as far as like what it takes to exercise the king on a daily basis, what I have found is, to me, the closest thing to that was starting a men's group. So I started a men's group, and every week we gather and we talk and we discuss and we try to help each other become better. Be the best versions of ourselves. To me, the best version of yourself is like, every person has a potential that they were birthed into this life with. And that potential only is actualized when we, willingly, out of our own will, decide that we want to actualize that potential, and then 2, put ourselves in the right atmosphere and environment for that potential to be actualized. And obviously you have to be consistent and you have to be dedicated, and all those things go into it too. But in the men's group, we really all kind of like know that we have this potential within us, and we want to help each other bring that out of each other and out of one another through accountability, through consistency. Every week we like tell each other what is our intention for the upcoming week, and then we hold each other accountable, as to whether or not they did what they said their intention is. We share what we're grateful for. We share, advice and what we see in one another, because oftentimes one of the best things that we can do for our growth is to see our blind spots. And if something is in our blind spot, by definition, we are not seeing it, but other people may be seeing it really well. So we try to help each other see our own blind spots. And that experience of having a men's group has been, to me, the closest practice that I have in my life to what it would look like to be a king. and help other people around you thrive? I would say probably going on mission trips, or really seeking to be of service to other people around you to thrive. I would say those are all ways to tap into the king, generosity, all those things. But for me, I found that the most satisfying way to be of service and to be generous is to first fill up your own cup and not try to give of an empty cup, because you just think it's like the good thing to do, to be of service and all those things. The best service that we can do oftentimes is to first carry our own weight, fill our own cup, and then from that full cup give unto others, so that A, we don't become resentful, two, we actually have something to offer. So I think that's super important to really go in those stages progressively. So I would say this video is probably good enough right now as a starting point. And my main message was to say, and just add to the conversation about masculinity, my main message was integrity and integrating all these aspects is the most crucial step of becoming a great man. Don't get so lost in becoming just one archetype that you forget that there are the other archetypes, because you have to know that there are different tools for different tasks. And a good house builder is the person that uses each tool for the purpose that it's designed to. He doesn't use a hammer to I don't know, to do something that a screw is supposed to do. He doesn't put the hammer in the wall and says, all right, let's hang something on this. Like, no, he knows a screw is used for something, a hammer is used for something, and these archetypes are like those tools. Like, we have to have the toolkit, and we have to have practice with all the tools in that toolkit. A good house builder, he has practice with all the tools. He knows how to use each one. And then he has the wisdom to know when to use what. And it's the same thing with these archetypes. We have to practice all of them in our own life, and then know when to tap into each one. And at the end of the day, I believe we want to be the person who has integrated all of these and has become whole within himself, and now can tap into those archetypes seamlessly and easily when they're needed. Because there's a time to be a lover and there's a time to be a warrior. And if you're a lover when it's supposed to be a warrior, when you're supposed to be a warrior, that's going to be a recipe for disaster. And many of us have learned that the hard way. And in this book, Strong Men, that I'm listening to now, he actually said something I really, really loved. He said, in the best civilizations, the philosophers are warriors and the warriors are philosophers. And, like, they're both, basically. That's what he was trying to say. I probably butchered that saying, but he was saying, in like Greece and Rome, like that's how it was when they were like at the best of their society. And what that says to me is this: it's just the importance of integrity, having that wholeness. A warrior that doesn't have the lover, that doesn't have the king, that doesn't have the magician, is not a complete warrior. And going back to what I was saying about actualizing our highest potential, our highest potential is, in my opinion, to be complete and whole and have that integrity of those archetypes versus just being in one. And yin and yang is another example to say we need both. We need the masculine and the feminine qualities to make us whole and complete. And it just takes practice. Every day you have to show up, and when you are presented with different opportunities to experience and exercise one of these archetypes. For example, you're at work, you have tasks to finish, but you're tired, you don't want to do it. You now are presented with an opportunity, with a choice point to tap into that warrior archetype and exercise that. And by exercising that, just like when you exercise a muscle, that muscle gets stronger. When you exercise an archetype, that archetype gets stronger. So really take seriously these choice points that you're presented with in your day-to-day life, because you don't need to go in a boot camp to become a warrior. You can literally turn your own life into a field, a battleground, so to speak, that every day you're presented with opportunities in your life to do something that would make you be a better or bet the best version of yourself. So I highly encourage you guys to check out these books that I put down in the description box. I really do believe that we are in the stage of our civilization and our society, especially in the Western world, where good times and easiness and comfort created a disaster. And weak men usually are built during easy times when there's like abundance of everything and everything's easy and there's no hardships. That's when weak men become weaker and weaker. And then weak men, that like that saying says, create bad times. And then the bad times are giving us opportunities, which I would say we are in the midst of one of those opportunities to become strong men. Our grandfathers may have had to go to wars, but we have other kinds of wars, in our own individual personal life within ourselves that we need to fight every day. So show up to those fights, win those battles, and know that victory is up ahead for you. Thank you so much for watching this video. Again, my name is PJ, and I am just a man walking alongside other men, trying to be the best versions of ourselves. And I know women probably watch this video, so to be politically correct, women also, being the best women that they can be. So thank you guys, and please subscribe to my channel if you would like to see more videos like this, and like this video if you enjoyed the content that I just shared. Yeah, check out the books. Thank you, and have a good day or night.